Talk about ways to improve code quality in this presentation. We talked about why we should care about code quality and also whose responsibility it is in previous presentations. But let's talk a little bit about how do we actually go about improving the code quality. One of my recommendations to improve the quality is start very early. It's really hard to catch up on quality late in the game. It is like living in poor health for a very long time and waking up one day and saying, I want to get better now. Sure, it's better late than never. We've heard that statement. But it's no fun being late to these things. When you are starting a new project or a new module in an existing project, go ahead and start thinking about quality and doing something about it right then and there. The reason is, remember back in time when you had found a tool for a particular project and you found that this tool can report on poor quality of code. You went on and installed it, and as soon as you installed it, what happened? It gave you a million warnings, and we said, hush, turn it off right now. This is way too much and we cannot handle it. So if we don't take care of quality from the beginning, it really becomes hard to take care of it later because it becomes overwhelming. The second thing I would recommend is don't compromise. It is easy to start compromising on quality. And one of the funny things about human mind is if we lower the quality, that becomes the new norm in our mind. And we say, oh, that's all right. It starts with naming variables poorly. We then write long methods, for example. We then name classes poorly. And we don't sense these things after a little while. Our senses dull down and the quality keeps going down. When you look at a quality of code which is not good, immediately fix it and ask people to take a look at it. Don't compromise. Bring people together. It's not about being punitive or punishment, but motivate them to write better quality code. And if they tell you there are reasons why this cannot be done, discuss the reasons, but not with the intention of compromising, but with the intention of understanding. If the constraint is really, really bad, then I would say, well, yes, you need to really maybe compromise a little bit in this case, but that's not a compromise as to let's go off the quality. I'll give you an example of this. I was working on a project where there was a code I wanted to write with a certain amount of quality. But we quickly found out that there is a compiler error and compiler bug. And because of the compiler bug, we cannot write the code the way should be written in a better quality way. So what do? Well, I'm sorry, we cannot write the code the way I want it to be written. It's got to be written with a bit of a poor quality. So it's time for compromise, right? Not really. Well, does it mean that we don't write the code and move on? No. So what we did was we wrote the code with the poor quality in that particular situation, put a note in there clearly saying why that code smells a little bit because of the error or bug in the compiler. But we did one other step. We wrote an automated test in such a way that the test would actually issue a separate compilation on another file where the code was of the right quality. Now, that code would not compile. It would fail because of the compiler bug, and our test captured that output from the compiler and said, if this error is being produced, sure enough, there is the bug in the compiler and we have to keep quiet. So the test passed if the compiler failed. But we put a note in the test where if the test were to fail, meaning that the bug doesn't exist in the compiler anymore, then the failure message of the test would say, hey, looks like this bug has been fixed in the compiler. Go clean up this smell in this code. Well, we put this in and a few months went by. And maybe about 6 months, we have been upgrading compilers along the way. And one fine morning, we upgrade the compiler, run our automated tests, and lo and behold, this test fails with the message saying, hey, looks like this bug has been fixed. Go clean up this code, clean up the smell. So in other words, if you're going to put something of a little bit of a poor quality because of the environmental constraints, put an expiration label on it. Don't leave that in there and say, shrug, I cannot help it. No, you can. Put an expression label on it and say, this smell can only stay for this long, and beyond this point, it's got to be cleaned up. As in this example, that smell can only stay until the bug exists in the compiler, but then it's got to be cleaned up. And I was joyful to go back and clean up the code and write the code in the right, quality, and say that, hey, this is great. The compiler bug doesn't exist anymore, and now we no longer have to write the code this way. The other thing to do is to schedule time to lower technical debt. A technical debt is a little bit of a poor quality code we accrue, the shortcuts we take sometimes, or the library that we have not had time to update, or that legacy code that we know has to be refactored but we haven't gotten time to do it. Well, these things are not going to magically happen. So rather than hiding or not considering them, go ahead and schedule a time in your sprint. For example, if your sprint contains, let's say, X amount of hours, go ahead and say, here is our technical debt that we have accumulated so far. We're going to split this technical debt across n number of sprints, and so in this sprint we're going to allocate this much amount of time to solve the technical debts, and in that time allocated, here's a high priority of the technical debts we're going to solve. So in other words, very clearly, very with intention, schedule time in your sprint for lowering technical debt. Identify and prioritize your technical debts that you want to solve in particular sprint and put in effort towards it. When it comes to writing code, one of the problems also is trying to be eager about quality of code and pursue a particular path of quality without really knowing what we are trying to do. And I've done this myself. I would have in mind a particular way I want to implement, and that often ends up really making things worse. So I follow this mantra called make it work, make it better real soon. So as you're writing code, be willing to refactor continuously and make something work. If you're not sure how something is going to work, go ahead and prototype it or experiment, play with it, make something to work and see if that's exactly what you want. And as soon as it works, immediately make it better and improve the quality of code then and there. Whenever I left a note for myself that said, come back and clear up the quality, that never doesn't seem to, time doesn't seem to come back because you always have other pressures to deal with. When this is fresh in our mind, we can clean up right away and make better certainly. So make it work and make it better real soon, and don't leave it behind for a later time. But when it comes to knowing what quality is, I would like to use lightweight, non-bureaucratic measures to look at the quality and have a insight into what is the quality and where it should be improved. Come up with lightweight tools, come up with lightweight procedures or process to be able to do this. If something is heavyweight, either a process or a tool, we often either tend to avoid it or we use it less often. And in that case, the quality slips and becomes hard to come back and catch up. So use lightweight measures. For example, don't bring the entire team into a room to do a code review. Instead, ask one person to do the code review on a task and another person to code review on the task. That is a lot lightweight, less ceremony. Also, don't give a boatload of stuff for somebody to review. Give them a little task. When somebody is given a little bit to review, they do a better job than when they're given a lot to review. So keep things lightweight. Similarly, using tools, find tools that are easier to run and automate rather than tools that are very heavyweight and requires a lot of setup and process to start up. So come up with lightweight solutions. Monitor the quality of code continuously. This is not something you can just come back and look at it once in a while. We got to be continuous and not episodic. So continuously monitor the quality. Hey, what's the code coverage? What are the number of warnings we have? What is the amount of duplication in code? Do we have other warnings? Do we have, lint programs, JS lint or JLint or whatever it is? Do they provide us some values? What about find bugs, PMD? Do these tools report anything? I want to keep an eye on those as part of continuous integration. But make those things visible. Imagine what would happen if you make some of these things visible. As people go to get coffee from the coffee machine, right above, put a monitor where you make visible your code coverage versus the number of bugs you have in each module. What if you display a chart of the amount of code coverage you have and the number of bugs you have? And see what impact that has on people when they come to get coffee and they look at this and what's going to be on their discussion and mind. And what if you display the quality of code in terms of other metrics? What is PMD report? What is the copy paste detector report? What is Simian report? If you display some of those results, how do people then respond to it? So go ahead and make these visible. When things are visible, it motivates people to pay attention. It is something in their mind. As they're getting a cup of coffee, they start thinking about it. When they look at a monitor and say, hey, look, that module is doing really well, and this module is not doing really well. But notice that module has a better coverage. Notice that module actually has fewer warnings. How could we achieve that in this module also? And there can be a trend that is shown, so it gives a sense for people where we are, where have we been, and where are we heading. But improving the quality of code requires change in our behavior. If we are not willing to change what we do, we cannot expect to get different results. So we have to motivate ourselves and the rest of the team to make change in behavior. If I'm used to giving poor names for variables, I should change my behavior and think about better quality names. If I'm used to writing long methods, I got to change my behavior. I have to first admit that long methods are evil, plain evil. And I have to start thinking about how to go ahead and write methods in a more modular fashion. At first, it's hard. If I'm not used to writing tests at all, automated tests, that requires a change in behavior. I've got to first be willing to accept that automated testing definitely helps and realize it. And if I'm not convinced, I need to take my time and effort to be convinced. And once I am, I got to change my behavior to start writing test cases. And in the beginning, it's going to be hard. Change in behavior is hard. Go to somebody who bites the nail and say, stop biting it now. It's very hard. I've been through it. Go to somebody who smokes and say, don't smoke from now. That's hard. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that. So change in behavior only happens if we are willing to make the change. Help. Go ahead and help the people around you. Go ahead and ask them, what can I do for you? If you look at a poor quality code, and it's not about being punishing people or trying to finger point, but go to somebody and say, hey, I'm looking at this code. Help me understand this a little bit. What are you trying to do here? Or what are we accomplishing in this code? It's not about fixing blame, but bringing to attention that something is of poor quality and you are interested in fixing it. So start a conversation. Hey, I'm looking at this code. I'm not sure what's happening here. Could you help me understand? And in leading through a question, you can improve the quality of that code and help the other person create better quality code. And last but not the least, be willing to be helped. When somebody comes to you and offers a help, be willing to take it. Or go to somebody when you're stuck with a problem and say, hey, I'm looking at this and I'm not sure how to write this with a better quality. Or here's a function I wrote. Is there a better way to do this? So ask for help and don't be, there's one of these is a culture. I come across companies where people feel that they cannot seek other people's help because they'll be looked down upon. That's a culture we have to fix. It should be a very safe environment to ask for help and be helped and ask for other people and say, hey, can I help you here? And look around and see what is the culture in your team. If the culture in your team is where people are afraid to ask for help among each other, we need to start addressing that very quickly because it's hard to really get better quality code when people fear each other and or feel intimidated. So help and be helped to improve the quality of code. So there are quite a few things we can do to improve the quality of code and every step of the way. And once we do some of these things, we can look back 2 months, 3 months, 6 months from now, and we see we have come a long way and things have improved along.